The time is now 6 p.m. Our regular city council meeting for March 24th, 2020 is now in session. Councilmember Brown will lead us with the opening prayer and the pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Please rise.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. Lord, we always want to start out with a thank you for the wonderful community that we live in, the teachers gathering together and having dire times, and absolutely gorgeous day today. We thank you for everything that we do have, strong community, good weather, good health. But if there's ever a time, Lord, tonight we need to ask for your blessings. We have a dire health emergency across the world, and our local, state, federal, and governments are all going through very demanding decision times, and help us make the right decisions for our people. In your name we pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We'll proceed with announcements of upcoming city events. We don't have any? Okay. Announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Dr. Brown? None? Okay. Announcements and recognitions by the mayor. I have one announcement. As a reminder, students who are participating in the Hal Baldwin Scholarship, you're required to sign in on the sheet located in the back, but I don't think anyone is here. So, and I do have one recognition also. I'd like to say I'm proud of our city staff for all their efforts regarding this virus situation as it continues to evolve. We are grateful to all our city staff who spend their time providing and protecting our city, and we thank you. Okay, we'll proceed with the hearing the residents. Okay, this time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the city council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the court, for the record, please state your name and address. We have one person, Maggie Tinnington.
Good evening, Council. I just wanted to come and give an update on some of the things that are going on in our business communities during this time. I'm going to lift this up a little bit so I don't hunch over. Because I want you aware, and I'm sure you all are aware, I've seen you out in the community. I know you're probably getting emails. I actually went and sent out emails myself and visited and done some takeout and just wanted to get a general temperature of how the business community is handling. As you know, it's been a struggle. It's been very difficult. We have had businesses close. We've had businesses lay off employees. We've had losses of an average of 50 to 75% of revenues. In just 2 weeks, a small mom and pop food business, a restaurant, lost $12,000 and had to let a couple of employees go. We had another that's a franchise, lost $50,000 in 1 week. A home supplier, $90,000. The owners themselves are taking pay cuts because they want to keep their employees on staff. They're really trying to create a better situation out of lemonade from lemons. Cancellation of book jobs. People are watching their pocketbooks. Just a whole bunch of things. We're getting a lot of questions through the chamber as well. We've been sending out daily letters, trying not to inundate their emails too much, but just so that they have some good information about the laws, about, I think currently right now, the laws of the paid sick leave that are coming up. There's confusion about who qualifies, what happens on that, what about the family medical leave, who qualifies for that. Very grateful to Representative Kemple and Senator Campbell because they were two instrumental people that helped us push through to get all of our counties to be recognized for that Small Business Association or Small Business Administration loan, because for some reason there was 10 counties in Texas and that was it. And so our businesses that really wanted to take advantage or at least find out the information about it, we were not listed and it took us 2 days, but we got all of our counties in there. But I don't want to do a doom and gloom, because we've also seen some inventive ways that business owners are pulling together that are helping each other. I know currently that Walmart and H-E-B are desperately needing stockers and are hiring those that, workers that have gotten laid off at other places. This may seem like a simple thing, but we had our chamber luncheon a couple weeks ago that was supposed to be on. We had already paid the caterer. We're going to pay our servers and stuff, but we went and got with the caterer, prepackaged the lunches, got some people together, and over 100 members donated their lunches so that we could distribute it to the seniors in our area at the Schertz Housing Authority. So there are good spots, and there are people behaving very well during this time and trying to help each other. But I do know that there is an uncertainty, there's a little bit of a desperation, and I know that there is talk of possibly extending the declaration that was made, could possibly be another week, could possibly be 30 days, could possibly be 60 days. Personally, I do feel 60 days would be detrimental to them, and it was expressed in a lot of emails as I was getting comments from them. They are prepared to just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and stick in for the long run, but some of them, it's just getting harder and harder and harder as more business does not come in or cancels. They just need something to give them a little bit of hope. And so I am hoping that whatever decisions are made tonight, whatever input that I have given you that is helpful or can continue to help the city in the coming weeks, that I'm a resource for you and a contact, and we will do all we can to support our small businesses and just business in general in our communities, because we know when this goes over, and this will blow over, and we will get better, that the economy is going to come back full force, and these very people are going to be going, oh my gosh, I wish I had, taken some time to breathe in that time, and we're going to be good again. But just let me know what we can do as the Chamber of Commerce to partner with you all, get some more good, accurate information out there, and what we can do to help you. We're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you. We value your input, and council will definitely take your comments into consideration. We'll move on to consent agenda items. Item number 1, the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting, March 10, 2020, and the minutes of the special emergency meeting of March 13, 2020. Item number 2, ordinance number 20A07, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, providing for the extension of the boundary lines of the City of Schertz, Texas by annexation of approximately 0.5 acres of land located at 13805 IH-10 East, City of Schertz, Bexar County, Texas. Item number 3, ordinance number 20S08, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning approximately 5 acres of land for Public Use District, PUB, located at 13805 IH-10 East, City of Schertz, Bexar County, Texas. And item number 4, resolution number 20R30, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, accepting the appraisal value offered by Texas Department of Transportation, TxDOT, to acquire a parcel of land needed for the IH-10 NEX project and other matters in connection therewith. Council, is there any of the following items need to be removed for separate action? No? Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 4?
So moved.
Motion to
Second.
Okay. Heard a motion made by Councilman Dalla, second by Councilmember Hayward. Council, any other comments? If not, let's call for the vote.
Just one on item 4, where you said IH-10 next project, it should be IH-35, just to clarify that for the record.
That's
My vote is aye.
IH-35. Okay, that is correct on the, misread it, thank you. Okay, motion was made by Councilmember Dalla and second by Councilmember Haywood. No other comments, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have 7 ayes, no objections, motion passes. Item number 5, ordinance number 20H09, An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz extending a declaration of local disaster, establishing rules and regulations for the duration of the disaster, restricting certain activities, establishing penalties and violations, providing an effective date, and declaring an emergency. This is our first and final reading. Before we proceed, I'd like to address the council. Council, on March 20th, I issued a declaration of disaster and a public health emergency to elevate the city's response to the COVID-19 and in support of Executive Order GA-08 issued by Governor Greg Abbott. Swift and decisive action was essential during this time, so all precautionary measures are taken and disseminate public awareness. In addition, the declaration provided our city reimbursements for expenditures associated with this virus. We don't know the level of risk or the economic impact to our city, but the trends and data from Italy indicate no one is immune. That is why we must continue to be vigilant. The City of Schertz jurisdiction is in 3 counties, Guadalupe, Bexar, and Comel. At this time, the City of Schertz will follow guidelines issued by Guadalupe County, regardless of the county of residence. However, should Bexar or Comel enforce stricter guidelines or provisions, those residing in their respective county should abide by those measures. My authority is only valid for 7 days and will expire on March 27 unless Council extends the declaration. I strongly recommend Council's approval to grant a 30-day extension to provide our city the flexibility to deal with the situation as it evolves and for the reasons such as the health and safety of our community must be our priority. Compliance with the Governor's executive order is still required and may be extended. Additionally, to ensure our city's requests for reimbursements continue to be validated. Please note this ordinance may only be rescinded by council. Therefore, it will be placed as a future agenda item to review or take necessary action. Council, you must have to ask yourself, what is your local responsibilities? Numerous options are available for your consideration, and now the responsibility lies on your shoulders. Council, the floor is open for discussion. And I think,
Did he?
okay, well, go ahead. I don't think we have a presentation. I think he's available to answer questions. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'll just answer questions, and I just wanted to add real quick to the mayor and just let all of you know that, you know, we've appreciated the mayor's leadership this week. He has been in his office and in meetings with us multiple times throughout each day the past, you know, week and a half, and he has just been very engaged in keeping track of everything that's going on. So we just really appreciate that level of engagement that you've brought to the team.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead. Councilmember Brown, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I fully agree that we need to extend from March 27th, but I also believe that we should be in line with some of the other dates, like April 6th, instead of a 30-day extension. I think that we do have an urgent need, but when we start extending things so long, we turn that urgency into a panic, and panics are not good. Panics are based on fear because nobody knows, and I'm not going to say we have an answer. I get that. But as the nation moves through this, things are being discovered, changed, et cetera, every day. All right. And although we've been hit with a lot of sick people across the nation, quite a few deaths, thankfully this area hasn't, and I realize that a lot of that is because of the safety measures that have already been taken. And I'm not saying that we need to stop the safety measures by any means. I just think that we need to be cautious on extending things too long, because it's going to cause people to, again, maybe panic is too much of a word, but they're going to go beyond the urgent stage. All right. And you have a lot of small businesses, and I'll be very honest, I'm one of them, Right now, we are hurting a lot. We are not tax funded. We're not government funded. We don't have the community requirements of a grocery store or something like that where you're going to have people coming in, right? And there are many other small businesses like ours that are being affected by this shutdown. All right? We have people out there that are not buying cars, not buying houses, not selling cars, whatever it happens to be, all right? Because they're all afraid. They're doing this out of fear. And if we govern with fear, I think that we're setting the wrong example. I'm not saying we shouldn't be cautious. I'm not saying that we shouldn't practice good measures, okay, and continue to do that. I strongly believe in that. But I also believe that we need to be a little bit more flexible in our outlooks. The president today was talking about April 12th, I think, is his target date. That may be, good. It may not be. I have no idea. But at least it's not talking about shutting the nation down through June, where people are just going to start, giving up. And we just can't have people giving up with that. That's my standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hayward.
I have to concur with Councilmember Brown. In going out in light of on Friday, before we started thinking about and talking with the governor and talking about the declaration that the governor had done, I spoke with different business owners, some of them entrepreneurs where they don't have franchisee backing and some do. And even though Maggie worked hard with our representatives to get Guadalupe County on, a lot of them just aren't really ready to take out a business loan that's going to tie them, even though it's 3% for 30 years. It was just a lot for that. And I think we should just be in line with the governor and then revisit it after April 6th. I think trying to push it out 30 days could be detrimental. I know we could meet to change it, but I think we should take it on a case by case. So April 6th, and then maybe have another meeting if we need to revisit it and extend it based on the cases or based on more information. After listening to a call today, they seem to be going in line with possibly finding something that will help. Some people, they're finding out, it's more of your elderly, so we need to be more concerned about them and keeping them safe. And I think we need to continue to be safe, but I think 30 days is just way too long to do that to this area when we don't really need it, I don't think.
Okay. Councilmember Scott.
Thank y'all for addressing that so eloquently. You articulated my concerns before they came out of my mouth. I used to be a research director back in the day for 20 years before I became a teacher about 5 years ago. So I know statistics. I know how to use them. I know what validity means. And you try not to use the word truth when you're doing research studies, because something can be valid without going into the epistemological question of truth or whatever. But I'm saying I'm very concerned with some of these statistics. We're shutting down the country for an epidemic, and admittedly it is a pandemic. It's like nothing, that we've experienced in our lifetimes. 90% of the American people tested don't have it, except for New York City, which is 28%. You have a lot of multinationals in high density, super high density area. Even LA, which is much more dense than Schertz or San Antonio, it's only 10% are coming back. Furthermore, 98 to 99% of the population fully recovers. I believe, as a statistician and research director, that number is much higher. You have a bunch of people, not even in the pool, who haven't been tested. They just feel kind of funky, they feel bad, they go to bed, and whatever. And we have no way of knowing if this is or not. I am not suggesting that we don't be careful, not for a moment. But as a teacher, one of my jobs was to call my students at home, and those stories would break your heart. There's one family where a teenage boy works 4 hours a day, and he's supporting the whole family right now. Hairdressers have been laid off. Waitresses, they're out of work, and a lot of them don't even qualify for unemployment. When the government help comes, it may be too little too late. And then the Schertz businesses, they're dying. I know a restaurant right up the road that I've known them since they opened up their doors 15 years ago. and they have to make $1,000 a day to be solvent. Last Sunday, they made $78, and this is a business killer. And at what point did we become so paralyzed by fearing death, we're so afraid to die that we forget to live? Thank God our forefathers didn't feel that way and not get on the ship to come over or what have you. We have to be able to live our lives. I'm over 60. I'm 61. I can't wait to go into that high school. Let the chips fall where they may. I hope God protects me, but I don't want to live my life closed in a wall and in a hole and see my whole country go down, nor my beloved community suffer so terribly. I'm on board with the April 6th, and let's revisit.
Okay, Councilmember Dalla.
All right, I guess one question real quick. Assuming this ordinance passed, it's in effect for 30 days or indefinite, or what's the timeline on the ordinance?
30 days from today with the review. We implicated the review every council meeting to extend or rescind.
Okay. I agree a lot with the previous comments that have been made by the other council members. I'll add some comments. Y'all know where I work. Y'all know what we've been going through at work. We don't know what's coming yet. We've just gotten around to testing. We're starting to see some of those test results come in. We're starting to see the numbers go up. We don't know if that's going to be a huge issue or not at this point, quite frankly. And certainly I want to take the advice of the experts in working to flatten that curve. I feel that it's important that we take appropriate steps to protect the vulnerable people in our community, the seniors, the young folks that may or may not be more susceptible to this than others. And taking the steps we're taking are appropriate at this point. I do have a lot of concern about the business community and what impact it's going to be. Certainly as part of this going forward, I certainly would like to have some conversations with EDC about ideas and things that we can do to possibly help and do more than what's already being done through the federal system. I think it'd be a lot more cost effective for us as a city to help the small businesses than to try to attract another business to replace somebody that goes out of business. And I think that's an important conversation that we need to have going forward, but certainly I definitely would like to review this every meeting, whether we're going to continue extension or not, and we'll take this a week at a time, I guess.
Okay, Councilmember Larson.
So what is the Guadalupe County declaration currently at? It's only is that only till April 7th, April 6th? Do we know?
I don't recall the exact date off the top of my head.
I mean,
I believe it's
7 days to the 27th. It's just a declaration of an emergency. I don't think they put anything more specific beyond that.
Oh, okay, okay. And then, but ultimately, and correct me if I'm wrong here, this is, maybe I say the quiet part out loud, but ultimately this is mostly administrative because we're going to be at the mercy of the counties and state jurisdiction anyways, correct? Like we're going to have to, we can make it more strict than them, but we can't make it less strict than them.
correct.
But in terms of the declaration of emergency, it opens, I'm guessing it opens pathways for funding and other administrative tests for you and your team, correct?
Yes, and as well as it makes reimbursement possible if we get to that point. It also made small business loans available for businesses when that declaration was declared.
Okay. And so we need that active for those to continue to be available, I would imagine.
Yes, sir.
And then just some basic emergency facts. Do we have any testing centers in Guadalupe County? Are they anyone? I know they were talking about drive-through testing within Bexar County. I'm guessing we're too small for that. So any cases we have are being sent to Bexar County? Or?
That's correct. There's 2 drive-through sites in Bexar County right now.
Okay.
That are being used.
And then I've heard that as of now, in Guadalupe County, there's 4 confirmed cases. Is that still accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay. I guess for me, I see this as mostly administrative from our standpoint. Certainly the declaration includes some important guidelines for our community. that are also held by the county. So I certainly don't want to put roadblocks administratively to block our emergency response. And then my understanding is that it can be rescinded at any time. I also have a concern that, just to be contrarian here a little bit, that they're certainly saying 30 days could cause panic, but I also think setting it, hey, it's going to be over in a week, and then, oh, nope, just another week, oh, nope, just another week, could also be problematic. Just in anecdotal conversations I've had related to the school, where it's like, oh, they're going back April 6th, they're going back April 7th. Well, no, they're not. They're pushing it back. I'm certainly not a soothsayer, but I cannot imagine that we will be business as normal on April 7th or 8th. So in that regard, I don't see any problem with the 30 days. Certainly, back to kind of the absurdity of representative government is that you've got a bunch of people here. I guess I can only speak for myself. So you've got someone up here who knows very little about pandemics and epidemics and viral spreading, making decisions for the community. But it certainly seems reasonable to extend this for the 30 days administratively, re-review at our next council to rescind or extend as necessary. But I don't think that there's a lot of messaging that the public is taking from the city of Schertz's extension of a declaration. I don't think there are going to be a lot of people reading into 30 days. And it seems like it's a pretty standard thing to just kind of stamp this, approve this, wait for further guidance from the county, and revisit at our next council meeting. So that's my 2 cents.
Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I'm not of the medical profession, and I'm not of the business world, so I'm going to try to avoid both of those. My concern, I'm not a big fan of pushing this out for 30 days. I'd rather look at it incrementally in smaller chunks. My concern is, how do we keep the public educated on what's applicable to them? Schertz is unique, somewhat unique, with having chunks in Comal County, in Guadalupe County, and Bexar County, like we previously mentioned. We've got fragmented direction from the state of Texas. As I understand it, the governor has pushed a lot of this down to the county chairs and let certain counties decide what they want to do in those counties. They're more worried about the populous ones, like Dallas and Bexar County and things like that, and Houston. They're not so concerned about the rural counties. So people are out there already on social media asking the question, why do I got to stay in my house when this county is living the normal life? I was reading Guadalupe County's declaration. The only thing they have on their website is a declaration saying they're creating an emergency like we did for 7 days with no specific guidance. On social media today, there's a bunch of people talking about how San Antonio's latest implementation of measures applies to Schertz, and people are going back and forth correcting them, saying, well, you know, but maybe, but whatever. So I'm concerned, how do we keep our residents educated with the fact that we have a set of restrictions that are put on the area by the state in general, and then on top of that, we've got 3 different counties that are putting out 3 different sets of measures. You know, how do we get our residents to understand what's applicable to them or not? You know, you've got one county saying, stay in your house. That doesn't apply to the entire city of Schertz. And the problem with it is, you know, our folks don't understand the layout of our community. They don't understand the size of our community. They still refer to it as this small town, Schertz. Heck, we're still planning for the Jubilee. We've got to go out there and have our carnival. They don't understand the size of our community and how it's spread out. So how do we, to me, the challenge for us is, how do we educate our residents and enforce guidance from 3 different counties? I mean, like I said, looking on social media today, 9 out of 10 posts, if not 99 out of 100 posts, people are like, yeah, I had no idea that I'm in Bexar County, or I'm in Guadalupe County, or, hey, I live here. You know, questions literally posted, I live here, does this Bexar County thing apply to me? And I think that's not a good place for us to be in if we're trying to take measures, whether it's telling a business, a restaurant, that they've got to close. You know, last week, I believe it was, New Braunfels put out a measure as part of their response that tattoo parlors, hairdressers, and nail salons were closed. If that becomes a Comal County initiative, how do we mesh that with what we get from Bexar County, with what we get from Guadalupe County? I mean, are we going to go and tell business owner A, you've got to shut your doors, and tell the guy half a mile down the street, it's game on, have a good time? So I think that's our biggest challenge, is how are we going to mesh these three areas together. If we don't take a singular one for the city of Schertz and says, this is what applies to the city of Schertz, A, B, C, and D, end of story. If we're going to go and say, these are the areas that affect Bexar County, Guadalupe County, Comal County, we've got to do a better job of getting this out to the public somehow with maps or something else to let them know, hey, go for a walk and walk your dog because you live on Schertz Parkway. If you live down there in the Crossvine, sorry, don't do anything. And I think that's going to be a very hard thing for our residents to understand. But if it comes to that, we're going to have to do a much better job of getting that word out there, and I think that's our biggest challenge.
Well, it has come to that. Chief, you want to address it?
Yeah, so just to kind of give that overview and what the team has been trying to do, and to your point, it's definitely we could do better with mapping or something like that. But essentially, when the county judge supersedes anything the city wants to do or tries to do, if the county judge makes a decision for that type of order, then that supersedes anything that we could do locally. So the mayor would not have the authority to take steps to reduce what that county judge had put in place. Anytime the county judge and the mayor disagree on an outcome of an order, the county judge ruling prevails in that instance. And so that is something that, we have met frequently with Guadalupe County, as well as staying in touch with the other two counties as well. But at the end of the day, when that county judge puts in an order, we are not able to change that or reduce what is in effect at that county level.
No, I absolutely understand that. But like I said, my concern is, how do we get the public to understand that? Again, if we've got a business that's in Guadalupe County, and Guadalupe County says or Comal County, and Guadalupe County says shut it down for 14 days, we're going to tell that business owner, lock your doors for 14 days. That's coming from the county. A block down the street, half a mile down the street, we've got Guadalupe County saying, hey, shut it down for 7 days. Or don't shut down at all for that particular type of business.
Yes, sir.
So what happens is it gets out to the community, and the community saying, what are you guys doing? You've got a hairdresser here. My hairdresser's got their doors locked, and this one, 3 blocks away, is open for business. And again, to me, it's confusing for the businesses, it's confusing for the residents, and again, it's one of those things where the residents come back and say, what exactly are you guys doing? Do we have a problem or not? Because you're closing this one down, and we're not closing down this one.
Well,
I would hate to take the hard stance and say, well, let's wait and see which county comes up with the most strictest measures, and then we adopt that as the city plan and just whack everybody in the city. I'm not advocating for that. Again, my only concern is I want to make sure that we're getting the word out to the public so that they understand some things come from the state, some things come from the counties. What you can and cannot do will vary or could vary greatly within the city of Schertz, and here's why, and here's where it applies to it. That's all.
well, let me comment on some of that. First of all, I don't think we have. I mean, we can certainly message, and we can certainly improve our messaging. I'm not saying that we could not improve our message. We can. But the reality is, I don't believe we have a variance in our city right now. I mean, I think that the businesses that have closed under the mayor's declaration. And frankly, the Bexar County shelter in place didn't really change that much. I mean, it's very similar to what we have. I don't think that we are enforcing a different standard in Bexar County than we are in the city of Schertz. So messaging, yes, we can do better, but in reality, I think that we're not enforcing to a different standard. I see, if we were going down to Bexar County businesses and we were saying, and we basically have 2 gas stations down there, you have a different standard than we do up here, that's a problem. But right now, all gas stations are exempted, so they're not closed. Our residents down there are under the shelter in place, but it's not that much different than what we currently have in our declaration. So in practice, I mean, in theory, I see that there could be a difference in practice. I don't think we're enforcing a difference. Now, I will say this, that of course what Cade says is true. The county judge trumps the city, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cade, the mayor could issue a shelter in place for our entire city. We could put ourselves under one umbrella, and that would be enforceable, right? We could go stricter than what the county, or we could do the same thing that the county. We could put all of ourselves, but I'm not sure we're ready to issue a shelter in place. So that's part of the conundrum. Dan, did you want to
speak? While it's true that there's a hierarchy in place as far as the under 418 from the state to the county to the city, you're autonomous under 122 of the Health and Safety Code. So once the mayor issues a declaration, it's going to stand for 7 days unless you extend it. But when you extend that, you're acting as a governing body under Chapter 122 of the Health and Safety Code. So the rules are whatever you set as a body. Now, as part of that extension, you can extend his authority that he exercised under 418 as well. But you need to specifically do that. And I was looking at the draft here, and it talks about the health authority. We would need to add the mayor in there in case during that extension he needs to increase the restrictions. So that's one part of it. The other part is where it says 30 to 60 days. If you want to revisit this on your April 7th meeting, then set it to expire at 11:59 on April 17th. And then at that meeting, you can extend it further if you want. Because what you're doing is you're adopting an ordinance. That's how cities govern. That's not how counties govern. Counties they don't have ordinance authority. So they're doing things differently. Once you enact an ordinance, only you, and the reason why we said that, the mayor can't repeal this is because he doesn't have the authority to repeal an ordinance. He can stop exercising his authority under 418, but we will need to repeal this once you put it in place when this is over. Okay, so anytime you extend it and you amend it, we will do it just like we do any other ordinance. It'll have to be an emergency approval on one reading, and it's going to have all that same language you would normally see. It's just not going to be codified, but it's still an ordinance. One other nuance in here is it has the penalty provisions that a county uses because they're enforcing the Health and Safety Code, which is a $1,000 fine and 6 months in jail under the Disaster Act of 1975. It's codified in Chapter 81 of the Health and Safety Code. You don't have to do that. Within your boundaries, that's always an option for a peace officer. But if we want to cite to your general health and safety violation authority in your city code, $2,000 fine, Class C misdemeanor, that is another option that your officers would have within your boundaries. And, to the point that Councilman Davis made, Mayor Pro Tem Davis, it's true that, I have other cities that are in 3 counties, and they did go with the strictest. And the reason why they went with the strictest county that they lie in is because that's the best way to have enforcement consistent throughout their geographic boundaries. The stay home and work provisions that are in the Bexar County and San Antonio, Bexar County, Bernie, Fair Oaks Ranch use those same provisions. They are pretty lenient. They're not that much different, but the thing that they offer is clarity, because they have all the definitions, they have all the descriptions, they say what is essential and what isn't, And they used the guidelines that were put in place by the Department of Homeland Security when they began enforcing these in California. So it's consistent. I'm not advocating you do that, but that's the logic behind the action that these other governing bodies have taken. If you stick with what you have here, it's fine. It will be superseded if a county, we don't know what Guadalupe County is going to do once the Commissioners Court meets, because it's the same principle. County judge acts, the Commissioners Court's going to have to act on that declaration within a certain amount of time. We'll see what they decide to do. Same with Comal County. Bexar County's is in place, and I don't see them doing anything except getting stricter and stricter if they choose to do anything. So, so that's just some nuances about how these things interplay. But specifically, you can put a date specific, certain in your ordinance, but I always go with 11/59. Don't go. I know the governor's going to act on the 6th, but we can't have this expire at the 6th or we're done. So we want to put the 7th and 11/59 on the 7th after your meeting. And then the other thing would be add the option of your general Class C enforcement in addition to the provision that's already in here would be my recommendation. So, and if you have any questions I can address, I'll be happy to address them.
So, just let counsel, Dan, but if we extend this ordinance, that's not going to do anything to the work safe, stay at home that Bexar County issued for our residents in Bexar County. This is not going to affect, we would have to do a whole new.
You don't have to do a new declaration.
An amendment.
Right. If they adopt what is before them tonight, yes. If you wanted to go with what the others did, you would have to adopt that your next time, or if you want to do that. That's correct.
Councilmember Scagliola, any comments?
Yeah, I'm not the right kind of doctor either, but I am a statistician, so I understand some of the numbers. It seems like the economic impact seems to be a lot worse than the progression of the disease itself, maybe because of some of the measures that have already been put in place. Can't really tell. I do appreciate Governor Abbott's decision to allow the counties and the cities to actually decide what type of restrictions to implement. The way I see it, we already have adequate restrictions in place. Most people are self-restricting themselves. Quite frankly, if you got no place to go, you aren't going to be going anywhere anyway. I don't see the need to, like Bexar County, shelter-in-place concept. Maybe it's justifiable in Bexar County, high population, San Antonio area. Yeah, I understand that. Guadalupe County, on the other hand, a lot more spread out. Don't have the concentration of individuals. I have no problem abiding what the counties are proposing at this time. As far as this ordinance goes, man, I'm adamantly opposed with establishing penalties for violations. One, how do you go track down these individuals? It's going to be selective at best. I think the provisions we have now are probably sufficient. As far as a due date on this, I like the idea of revisiting it on the 7th. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward? You have additional?
I had a question for Dan. Because you were saying in there that we can, if we set a date, but we can add the mayor to this so that in the event he has to do an emergency, again, then do we add that to this?
Right, so right now.
Or how do we do that?
Well, there was more to it, I thought. Right now, your exhibit states that the health authority, who's your health authority here? You'll have one, right? So right now, Dr. Butter is who you reference as a health authority that could provide for stricter provisions. That language is good under 122, but I would add the mayor to that because typically that's who that's going to come from, even if it's on the recommendation of the health authority. Right now, the health authority order that's in place statewide was issued, which is why we're acting under 122. But yes, where it has on your exhibit the health authority, I would also add the mayor, if he, that allows him, instead of having to call an emergency meeting, if this dramatically changes when we get the spring break bump that's coming, because as you know, once they have to start getting tested for it. Right now, Louisiana is experiencing the Mardi Gras bump, and Texas is going to get probably a spring break bump, but that would allow him to act on his own until the next meeting or until you could call a meeting and act. You don't have to give him that authority, but it's already in here for the health authority. It would just add the mayor to that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Dalla?
Just to address Dr. Scagliola's comment about the penalties, you know, philosophically I agree with that concept, that there shouldn't be penalties, but what I'm seeing and experiencing, there's a whole lot of people out there that are non-compliant with the requests that are so far reasonable to moderate requests on the part of the community for community health and safety. And they remain intentionally non-compliant because they don't feel that it's important enough for them to interrupt their lifestyles with what's going on. So if we do pass this ordinance, I think the enforcing authorities do need to have the ability to use their discretion to apply penalties if and when it becomes necessary, that the officers or whoever's doing this feels that it needs to be done in order to affect compliance to flatten that curve.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Scott?
I would like to ask, what activities are you referring to? When you said you saw people that were not in compliance, I have not witnessed that. What specifically are we talking about?
People having parties in their homes, and again, where I work, being non-compliant with requests to enforce social distancing, whether they're waiting in line or wandering around inside. There's numerous examples that you can come up with, but those are two quick and easy ones.
Okay. Mr. Kelm, could you address the council as far as businesses?
Yes, sir. So starting with your declaration, we started sending code enforcement and police officers around to the local area businesses, just informing them of the declaration. So some were aware, some were not. And so we had 8 of the hair salons specifically. One was still open, and we said, hey, you need to close, here's the declaration, and they completely complied on their own volition. They just were not aware. So most businesses are complying, but right now we're doing a lot of education with the officers and code enforcement as we go around. That's been our approach all along. We would recommend from a public safety perspective that the enforcement actions stay in there, just like Councilman Dalla said. It gives us that authority if we need to, without that specific in our declaration, because it's not in our plan currently. 218 is, and I'm not a lawyer either, but we need that in there from an enforcement perspective, so we would recommend that. But again, from a code enforcement and our police officers, we've been on an education basis trying to work with our business owners where we can to provide that. We've been very liberal in the enforcement actions, if that addresses your concerns potentially.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown?
Thank you. Again, I am all in favor of keeping the measures that we have in place. I don't have any issues with that. My only issue has been the extension beyond April 7th, 11:59, because we want to continue to give the public some positive aspect of things instead of just being we're long-term negative. I understand we have to have some level of enforcement. I get it. Okay, we don't need people just wantonly having, you know, tailgate parties in Pickerel Park because they don't think, you know, it applies, or all of a sudden it's 80 degrees and it's going to kill the virus. Whatever the internet says that day. And again, just a comment on that, with all these people staying home, there's a lot more experts out there, all right? And we got to be careful about that, too. So, yeah, education will be a key element of our success.
Thank you. Chief, I have a question for you. The implications if council decides to go with, no, I almost want to say April 7th, because the 6th is a Monday and 7th is a Tuesday when we have our council meetings. What are the implications if we go with April 7th compared to the 30-day? Would there be any?
So I would just say one of the reasons for the 30 days is flexibility. This has changed by the hour, sometimes several times throughout the day. A press conference has occurred, and then changes were, being implemented, within an hour of that press conference. So at the end of the day, the 30 days is to provide that flexibility. So if things change, if things get better, either way, it's going to be on the April 7th council meeting. Whether you do 30 days or not, it just provides that flexibility, so you just never know what's going to happen. And so since it would provide less clarity if, we tried to do a council meeting, for example, on April 7th, and we, decided to try a, virtual council meeting or something, and then we had a technical difficulty and was unable to complete that council meeting at that time, where it's delayed until after midnight. Those things are what the 30 days is meant, to look at, is to handle those types of unknowns that occur, and allows that flexibility to react, at a moment's notice as needed, as new information comes out throughout several times in a day.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to remind council, on March 13th, we had a difficult time trying to reach a quorum, and that's one of the flexibilities that we're asking for here. We don't know what the road is ahead of us, but certainly we want council to know that this will be on the agenda. Whether you decide it's April 7th, and you want to extend it, or you want to rescind it at that point, it will be on the agenda. It will be on the agenda on April 14th. There's no doubt about it. We're providing you the flexibility at that point to rescind or expand the date. We're not trying to limit council's ability, but we do need that flexibility because we have no idea what's in store for us in the future. And that's the only reason we requested 30 days. And also preparedness. We have to prepare as a city for the long run. And again, the flexibility is what we're asking for. It's administratively, like we said, small business loans, our reimbursements for the expenditures associated with this virus. So what happens if there is a break? Do we have to submit two declarations? One because it finished on this date and then it ramped up again 2 days later. So the implications might be there. But to make it clear is that council will be notified, and we will try to reach a quorum, whether it's through telephonic or video. That is our whole intent. So with that in mind, from what I understand is, let me make a motion from the chair here, because the 30 days, I got 2 dates here, 30 days and the 7th, okay? So we'll take a vote on both dates and see exactly how council feels before we pass the ordinance. How's that? Okay? Yes, Councilmember Dahl.
Just real comment, when we're looking at the dates and looking at the calendar here, For everybody, if you don't know, the school districts have extended their closures till the 24th of April, which would have them tentatively reopening on the 27th. If we do a 30-day, today being the 24th, that would be March 24th, so our 30-day would expire before schools would reopen, and our next meeting would be on the 28th after, so we would have to extend that the 30-day prior to if the school districts continue to extend their closures.
Okay. I think we could go with a date, 28th or the 7th. Let's see how council decides on this. Okay, I'll make a motion on the floor to extend the expiration date for April 28th. And do I have a second? You don't have a second. Okay. We'll make a motion then. Yes.
Can I make a suggestion just based off maybe a happy medium? Because there is one concern that Chief brought up, that if we have this extended until the 7th and there's some sort of issue with achieving a quorum, it limits our recourse. Can we give ourselves, I know nobody wants to do 30 days, but I wonder if my fellow council members would be welcome to maybe making it to the 14th or to the 10th, anything to give us a buffer there in case we need to react to technological problems related to telemeeting or whatever that may be. I think that would address, at least from my perspective, the largest concern of the issue that he brought up for me is what happens if the world makes it where we can't meet and then it just is going to expire. I don't know if that's a huge deal, but there certainly impacts them administratively. So I'd be open. I'm okay with the 7th at 11:59, but I think giving ourselves a couple days buffer zone, making it the 10th or the 14th makes sense, but I'll just throw that out there.
I'll take that as a motion, Councilman.
A motion to extend to the 14th at 11:59.
Second.
We have a second. Okay. Councilmember Hayward, do you have additional comments?
I did, but I think it would be a motion to add you as.
Oh, we're just
The motion,
setting, we're just setting the date right now. Okay. So we have a motion to extend it to the 24th by Councilmember Larson and second by Councilmember Brown.
That would be the 14th.
The 14th, I'm sorry. The 14th of April
11:59.
at 11:59. Motion made by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Brown. Okay, any other comments?
Oh.
Scagliola.
Scagliola, I am so sorry. Okay, that's what social distancing does to us. We don't know where the voice is coming from. Okay, once again, April 14th, a motion made by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Scagliola. Any other comments?
I had one.
Yes, Councilmember Scott?
Yeah, I felt like that just threw a monkey wrench in everything. I'm so on board with April 7, and the reason that we were out of town is because of spring break. That was quite extraordinary and unexpected, but we're all pretty much homebound now. I didn't see that happening unless the world's going to end. I know that you should, hope for the best and prepare for the worst, but I don't like reactionary decisions and I don't like fear-based decisions at all. And I was trying to say that before any of this came up, but I know we have to go through due process. So,
Okay.
can I make or where do we go? I'm not.
No, there's a motion on the floor already.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Okay, motion's been made. Any further comments? No, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
We're just voting on the date, just the date.
Extending the date to the 14th at
14 till 11:59. Okay.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay. I am confused. Let's start it one more time.
This way.
Okay, go ahead.
Aye.
Nay.
Where are we going?
We're going this way. We're going this way.
way.
No, this way, yes.
Always goes that
I'm
way.
sorry. Social distance. Oh, my.
Okay. Councilmember Dalla.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, I think I heard 5 yeas and 3 nays. Motion,
It'll be 4 and 3.
4-3. 4-3? No, it can't be.
Social distance is getting us tonight.
Yes. I didn't hear what yours was, Councilmember Brown. Was it a yay? A yay? Okay. So we got, was it a nay or a yay? I'm sorry.
Nay, sir.
Nay, okay. So it's 4 yays and 3 nays.
I thought it was 4 nays.
Was it 4?
Again?
I- 4 nays, okay. Yeah, let's raise hands to who wants the 14th. I make it easier because I really don't know who said what.
All right, so
Okay.
in favor of.
In favor of the 14th? Yes. Okay, it's 4 yays and 3 nays. Okay, so the date is set for April 14th. 4 ayes.
Ayes, 3 nays.
3 nays. The motion for the 14th of April is passed. So now, the other amendment to it will be to add the mayor. Is that what we want to do, is
Yes.
go ahead and add the mayor to the ordinance?
Dan?
We'll need Dan to help with that language.
Okay? Yeah. We're just adding the mayor.
Yeah, so it's currently it reads, the local health authority and director of health may update restrictions. I would add the mayor to that. The local health authority, director of health, and mayor may update.
All right, what he said.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. We will be adding the mayor. Let's, do we need, I think we don't need to make a motion for that particular thing. I think we'll
Want to
just
make
amend
that
it.
addition? Yeah, so you're not making a main motion yet on the item. Y'all are having motions on these intermediate issues, and you can do it on this item as well.
Okay,
Before you have a motion on the final
on the final
ordinance.
product. Okay, so a motion to add the mayor was made by Councilmember Dalla and second by Councilmember Hayward. Okay, any other comments? No, let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 That was easy. 6 ayes, 1 objection. Motion carries. Another motion, and it's the amendment for enforcement and penalties was the other topic that was raised. We are planning to leave that in place. Do I have a motion on the floor to leave enforcement in place and apply penalties?
Question.
Yes.
So whether you want to have that or not, that's state law. They're going to have the authority to enforce. All I was suggesting is that you also make this a violation of your city code or of a local ordinance enforceable under your city code, because then it could just be a Class C misdemeanor, a little less aggressive if someone comes out. And there were some questions about enforcement. And I will tell you, I have officers in other cities who, yes, have had to go out and have discussions. We had to go out to one business 3 times this last weekend because they just kept letting people in. So it is happening, but at the same time, I don't know of any actual citations or arrests or anything such as that. It's about compliance. So.
Okay. Is there a motion to add to our city code the penalties that will be imposed?
Mayor.
Yes.
So my understanding is this would make it less stringent to have it as a city code to where it wouldn't be as,
It's just another option for enforcement.
no, I'm asking you, would this make it less stringent and less bureaucratic and less oppressive on our citizens, yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that.
Oh, I didn't mean to be hostile, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to
What this does
understand.
is this makes it a Class C misdemeanor in violation of a health ordinance, just like you already have. If there's a nuisance violation in your city, this is the citation they write.
Okay.
It's punishable by a fine up to $2,000 already in your code. Trash, rubbish, debris, anything such as that. Because this is a health and safety violation, it brings it in line with that. As far as the $1,000 fine and 180 days in jail, that is still available for an egregious violator because that's a state penalty. So we're not repealing that. It's already in here. This just gives a less strict option for as far as writing a Class C citation if you wanted to.
Thank you.
Okay. Council, any other questions? No? Okay, so to add to our city code, do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Dallas, second by Councilmember Hayward. Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Okay, we have 6 ayes, 1 objection. That motion passes. So ordinance number 20H09. Motion's been, I'll make the motion from the floor. Motion's been made, I'm making the motion for ordinance 20H09 to go ahead and pass the ordinance with the enforcement, amend the reading to add the mayor with an expiration date set for 14th April at 11:59. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by myself, second by Councilmember Davis. Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay. 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Thank you all for your patience on this one. Okay, we have a public hearing. Ordinance number 20S01, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning approximately 12.5 acres of land from Manufacturing Home Park District, MHP, to Planned Development District, PDD, located approximately 1,500 feet southwest of the intersection between Schertz Parkway and Maskey Road, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas, also known as Windy Meadows Subdivision Unit 4. Mr. James, you have the floor. This is also our first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a rezoning request for Windy Meadows. I'll try to be very brief given the kind of more important items on the agenda tonight. Currently, it's the Windy Meadows Mobile Home Park. It's zoned per our straight mobile home ordinance district. That provides for minimum kind of space sizes for each mobile home. That may have been a good idea in the past. That may have worked well in the past, but given the fact that now mobile homes are different sizes, double wides, things like that, we found it's a little bit overly restrictive. So in part of it where they haven't developed yet, they're looking to rezone the property to a planned development district that essentially adopts that underlying zoning district, but rather than require space sizes, it relies on setbacks, which is really at the crux of the ordinance. We want to ensure that the mobile homes are a certain distance from one another for safety. But we think this is a good way to balance the interest of the city with regard to safety, but provide greater flexibility for the property owner. Again, as we've kind of looked at some layouts, and again, it's not restricted by it, adds about 30, 35 additional units to the undeveloped part of it. So staff is recommending approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval, and I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Mr. James. This agenda item is an open hearing. And is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the council in reference to this subject? Okay. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Craig Shellbach. I'm an engineering manager with Yes Communities. My office is at 5605 MacArthur Boulevard in Irving, Texas. And I really don't have a presentation so much to make, but I do want to let you know I appreciate your time considering this, and glad to answer any questions I can that may come up. We acquired the property several years back, and during all that time we've kind of wondered how this one small parcel off of Maskey Road ended up getting developed only halfway like it did. And essentially there's a couple of dead-end streets that don't go anywhere, so circulation is not good for the residents that occupy the property, not good for emergency services either. So working with city staff on an approach to correct that and improve the circulation, it looked like going with this PD route might be the best option for us. So we think that'll improve circulation, and we'll also be dedicating right-of-way for the future extension of Live Oak Road. And I think overall will be allow us to use the remaining property and provide additional screening and landscaping as well. So appreciate your consideration. Happy to answer any questions that may come up and consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, this is second notice regarding the public hearing. Anyone? Final notice on comments regarding this public hearing. None? Okay, public hearing is closed. Council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Larson.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 20S01.
Second the motion.
Okay. Motion's been made by Councilmember Larson and second by Councilmember Scott. Council, any other comments?
I'll just say I watched the video from the Planning and Zoning meeting, and this looks like it's a totally appropriate way to handle this, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No? Let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We'll go around with this.
Oh, okay, aye.
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 Okay, 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Roll call confirmation. Our City Secretary, Brenda Dennis, will provide roll call confirmation for items 1 through 6.
Consent agenda items 1 through 4. Motion was made by Councilmember Dallas, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Scott, Larson, Dallas, Gagliardi, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. There's a motion from Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Scagliola, to extend the declaration ordinance to April 15th. I'm sorry, April 14th at 11:59. Mayor Pro Tem Davis voted yes. Councilmember Scott voted no. Councilmember Larson, Dallas, Gagliola voted yes. Councilmember Hayward and Councilmember Brown voted no. Motion passed. Motion to add the mayor as a health authority was made by Councilmember Dallas, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dalla, Hayward and Brown voted yes. Scagliola voted no. Motion passed. Motion to add to the city code and apply penalties. A motion was made to add penalties to the ordinance. Motion was made by Councilmember Dalla, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. Councilmember Scott voted no. Motion passed. So, ordinance number 20H09, adding the mayor as the health authority and enforcing the enforcement penalties, and to extend it to April 14th at 11:59. Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, and Brown voted yes. Motion passed.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dennis, did you mention item number 6 on the roll call confirmation?
One second. My apologies. Yes, I apologize. Item number 6, ordinance number 20S01 on first reading. Motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Scott. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, and Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed.
Thank you. Moving forward to our workshops, proposed amendment, Chapter 14, Animal Control, a presentation by the Schertz Animal Services to propose and discuss an ordinance of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending Chapter 14, Animal Control of the Code of Ordinance, providing for a mandatory microchipping regulations for dogs and cats, therefore removing the requirement for annual city licenses for dogs and cats. Chief Bain, floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Dr. Brown. I want to talk to you this evening about mandatory microchipping. It's something that we've been looking at for quite some time. And many people ask why. Well, the days of the metal tags have come and gone. With the technology we have today, there's a much better way of tracking animals and being able to get them back to their owners. One thing we looked at is what is the life expectancy of a microchip in an animal. It's roughly 20 years, which well exceeds a cat or a dog's lifetime. The metal tags, a lot of times we get animals in at the shelter. Most of the time they're not wearing them. You know, they fall off. Owners don't put them on. They can be switched from animal to animal. Microchips are there. They can't be taken out once they're in. What we found that the microchips also provide us with the higher return rate to the owners. We've personally experienced this over the last couple of years, and research has shown that 3 out of 4 times an animal can get back to its owner through a microchip. Benefits. Your animal is stolen, ends up in the shelter. It's easily identified. The veterinarian offices have it, our animal services staff have it, and we've even put it in every single one of our trucks, so they can even be identified in the field. It provides proof of ownership of the animal. Ability to return the animals back to the owner is much quicker. You know, once again, if we can scan it in the field, it would never have to come to the shelter. We could take it directly to somebody's house. Minimize operating costs. If we can shorten the length of stay or just prevent the length of stay of any animal at the shelter and lower the population overall, that lowers the operating costs. It's less manpower hours, and quite honestly, just with the population that we have seen, an explosion this last year, we need to do anything we can to get animals out of the shelter and back in their homes. We offer already a low-cost microchipping service to our community. Currently, under the registration, our citizens have to pay $5 a year. So you have to come to the shelter, do the paperwork, pay $5. Looking at long term, it's a one-time $15 fee for our citizens. They don't have to come back every year. Once they register, it's microchipped, it's there. So it's once again, it's more efficient for our citizens and more efficient for our staff. We also looked at microchipping at our local vet offices, and that ranges anywhere from $45 to $85 per animal. On the higher end, some of the vets do require an exam before they will microchip. Most of these microchips these days are registered for the life of the animal. The customer can decide if they want to provide or purchase additional services through the chip vendor. But there are also free options out there as well, such as free pet registry and Michelson found animals. We also found each chip vendor has a set of numbers, which also helps us identify the vendor. Our intent and biggest push is to get animals back to their families. Our goal is to empty that shelter. If we can get an animal in and take it right back to its owner, it's better for everybody. Upon passing the ordinance, we'd like to have a 180-day grace period. This will be used to educate the community and get them prepared for the ordinance. We will continue to provide low-cost microchipping to everybody in the community. We also have community events that we do every year and could do that on site through our adoption trailer. And our goal is not to proactively stop pet owners in the community and check for chips. Just much like we do now, if we come across it, we'll verify it at that point. Questions?
Okay, council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Davis.
Under the current program for getting an annual license, is there a fee for that?
$5 a year.
So they're paying $5 a year anyway?
Yes.
Their compliance with the current code anyway. So
right.
This could be a one-time done.
It is.
Okay.
And I ran the numbers this afternoon, and based on current revenue, this fiscal year, 38 people have registered their animals. So, town of 45+ thousand people, we know we have thousands of animals here, and 38 people have registered. So if we can not only work with the community for this one-time microchipping and work with our local vets offices, our adoption partners, rescues, I think we'll be much more successful.
Councilmember Larson.
Hoping I get immunity for my testimony, but my pets are not registered annually. In fact, I didn't even think of doing it annually. I think when we first got them, we registered them. So this, from that perspective only, makes sense. All mine are microchipped, so I think this is a pretty common sense approach. Thank you for putting this together.
Councilmember Dalla.
Well, since you're not hunting them down, I guess I'll confess as well that I've never paid the $5 fee. A question on the $15 cost. Is that our cost on that, or is there a slight, I guess, markup on it?
There's just a slight, but that covers the staffing.
Right, and that's perfectly fine. And you said it's available to the whole community. Does that include non-Schertz residents?
If anybody comes to the shelter and they want a microchip, we'll do it.
All right, good deal. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayward.
Gosh, I forgot my question that quick. The question I have is as far as like once they get microchip, because I do know that a lot of people tend to get their dog microchip, but they don't fill out the paperwork, so you still don't know where the dog belongs. So is there an alternative of what you're going to do or a methodology you're going to do to try to make sure that doesn't happen?
We looked at the different microchipping organizations, your vets, your shelters. They register. It's not up to the owner at that point. Once they implant it, such as our facility, if we implant, we're registering that animal. I think the days of just individual implanting on your own are coming to an end.
Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, Chief, I was just wondering, you going to be open in the next couple of weeks?
We are offering appointments. We close the doors at the time just for precautionary reasons, but we do offer appointments.
Okay, cool. Hey, normally rabies shots, distemper, leukopenia, whatever, are required once a year also. Okay, so this keeps an individual from having to register their animal, but normally doesn't that registration occur concurrent with getting that rabies shot? So how do we accomplish both, or is that not a concern?
The vets are still issuing the metal tags once somebody's gone in and had their animal vaccinated. At the time of registration, and anytime we have an animal picked up from the facility, we do ask for that proof of registration or vaccination. And that's something that we will continue to ask for. A lot of times we'll tell them, go get it done, get back with us, let us know it's been confirmed. We'll confirm with the vet. And we just ask for compliance. Our goal isn't to cite everybody.
Okay, and penalties associated with noncompliance?
With the rabies or the implant?
Implant.
It would be, I forget the terminology of what's currently in the ordinance with the tags, but it should be the same as the metal tags currently. We haven't changed any penalty.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dalla, you had additional comments?
No, actually, I'm okay. I
Okay.
can answer the question.
All right, Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, are you aware of the studies that were done back in the 1990s and even up to today about how the microchips can cause cancer in some pets, like 1% about?
I haven't seen any of that research.
Yeah, there's 11 published
the research
studies.
that was done with microchips and didn't see any of that.
Right, and even though it's a small risk, it's still there, and so I wanted to point that out. I recently bought an electromagnetic reader, for lack of a better word, like a filter, and I went around our house, and the new smart meters that GVEC put through, that thing went through the roof. We are constantly bombarded by radiation. We're Radiation Nation, and I think these are valid concerns. And so I would rather personally leave that decision in the hands of the consumer or the pet owner rather than have us legislate that from on high. So there are studies out there. I encourage y'all to look at those.
Councilmember Hayward.
My knowledge, Chief Bain, when you say mandatory, it's not like you're going out hunting people down and saying you have to do this, and it's only if someone, the consumer, wants to come in and do it, or if you get a lost pet, and then when that pet comes in and they come to get the pet, then the pet is microchipped, correct?
Just like we do currently with the metal tags.
Okay. Any other comments? No, Chief? Oh, Councilmember Larson?
Oh, I'm just making a motion to, was there a
There's no motion, there's no motion. No. No, there appears to be a consensus from council, and offered very few suggestions on your ordinance, so I just think that we should prepare it for council's review and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll proceed with the item number 8, the general fund reserves and major projects. Discussion on general fund reserves and major projects that are currently in execution or projected to be executed during this fiscal year. Council, I place this one on the agenda. Due to the economic impact this virus may have on our city, I thought it would be prudent to review the projects that have been, the projects and have council's input for any additional contracts that are pending before they become finalized. And I think, Mr. James, if you go provide the information to council so they can review it.
Sure. So, right, per council's request, staff provided in your packet a written summary of where we stand with regard to the fund balance. You may recall we have a policy that targets that at 26% of our general fund. That's about $9 million. We are above that. The plan had been to spend down, but just as a reminder, 25% of that is for sort of disaster recovery. 1% is to kind of ease our way in, probably ease our way in is a bad term, to be able to make thoughtful decisions as we move into mode of an economic downturn and adjust to maybe finish a project or do a project that would be much more expensive to pause and then do when the downturn lifted. So with that, we are certainly over that. We had planned to spend down part of that this year for a variety of things in our budget. We've got a $1.5 million above that we were not planning to spend down. But again, large upcoming items, we had about $4 million for capital improvement projects, generally roads, streets, and drains. That's money that we have not issued or approved contracts for construction. We have the additional positions, the 9 positions included as part of the budget that we deferred hiring until the staffing study was done. It's about $415,000 for this year. The class and comp study, we had about $275,000 to sort of work our way into that this first year. And then again, we had projected with the 5-year model, I think about $250,000 the next 4 years out. And then again, we have merit increases this year, about $181,000 for the general fund. So those are general fund dollar numbers of what we had budgeted this year. Did note that some of those items are recurring, so generally if we give staff raises, whenever we start them this year, there's that amount, and then it's increased salaries for next year. So that was part of what the staff report was on. The other part was to give you a feel for what we're looking at relative to the economic impact of this. Certainly part of it is the impact on city revenues. That's pavilion rentals, civic center rentals. It's also the interest we get on our investments, just like the private sector as well. So those revenue decreases sort of directly from those things. But then I think the bigger picture that you all discussed earlier tonight is certainly when the economy turns, businesses struggle with that. Again, when folks are staying at home, they may be going to H-E-B to buy groceries. A lot of those things they don't pay a sales tax for, but they may not be making other purchases where there is a sales tax coming in. Again, businesses having to lay off folks or folks being concerned about that, quit spending on items associated with that. Businesses may stop making investments into new equipment, into expansions. We may see a downturn in sort of new construction. We have not To date, they're still going, but again, I think as the report noted, this is really a new phenomena for us. I think a lot of folks are waiting to see how long it lasts, and then the other is what sort of aid comes from the federal government and the state governments to local communities in terms of that impact that it would have. And then certainly there's a depression in terms of property values as well that often accompanies downturns. Again, we're waiting to see on this one. So staff is certainly monitoring it. I will say that a lot of this we sort of lag behind. So we lag a couple months behind on sales tax. Often with property values, we lag a year, 2 years behind. So it's something we're obviously concerned about. Again, I think as we talk to businesses owners and folks in the community, as Maggie mentioned, and you guys hear from folks, we understand those impacts. So it's something we're certainly keeping an eye on as well. But that's the gist of what we've provided to you. But again, we take advantage, avail ourselves to kind of any information that sort of comes out as people project what impact this may have on the national economy, on state, the region, and local governments.
Okay. Council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Larson.
So this was one that I was really watching, and I've confirmed that I can talk this broadly on the financial aspects. But I think one of the things that's true about what we're facing now is nobody knows what we're facing now. I know, and Dr. Brown has been great in getting some answers to my questions. I know when this first started, there was a pretty strong feeling from economists that the economy was going to bounce back relatively quickly. Of course, that was very different situation than it is now. I don't know that that is as widely believed, and the longer that any of these shutdowns last, even just extending ours as an example of that, businesses are going to, the reality is businesses are going to close for this, and they're not going to reopen. April 1st is coming, and there's going to be that first round of rents due, the first round of mortgages due. I know my mortgage provider's offering what they're calling is relief, ultimately forbearance, so that even if you get through April 1st, that amount's still due. And then, of course, just public sentiment. I work in the IT sector. Projects that were booming, they're not booming anymore. There's just a lot of uncertainty. And so I think just from a perspective of being diligent in the community, understanding what we don't understand is, I think we need to take some more drastic measures in terms of doing everything we can to make sure that our staff remains employed and secure in their employment. Doing everything that we can to, if we're spending on any essential, obviously those need to be kept, services to be maintained. Maybe some non-essential projects if the vendor is a local vendor, but otherwise I think that we need to consider temporarily, while we get the data of what this is going to look like, a hiring freeze, a project freeze. Ultimately, understanding that our goal is to try to maintain the services that we have as best we can, maintain the employee levels that we have the best we can, and understanding that what our economic picture looked like when we passed the budget is dramatically different than what it's going to look like. I think that's true for every organization in the country right now, across the board. And so I think we should be careful. I know in 2008, I wasn't here. I heard the stories. There was a little bit different philosophy. We moved forward with some projects, not knowing what that was going to look like. We were able to survive with good leadership from staff, but it put us behind to the point where we passed all of the tax increases that we did last couple of years. The impact fees, the tax rate was based on being behind. And so I think drastic times take for drastic measures, and I really think the city should consider, and the council should consider, a policy directive that says, hey, we don't know what this is going to look like. Certainly an empty building, I don't know what that lawsuit's turned out, but an empty building generally has lower property value than an active, vibrant building. People not buying houses will have an impact on the rate of growth, if nothing else. Our location may insulate us from that, some being in Texas, but even just sales tax revenues. I have a friend who's in a pretty evergreen industry who said, this first time in 10 years, we didn't collect any fees this month. And it's not the industries that you think of. It's not just the restaurants and the retail. It's every auxiliary, accounting, real estate, just up and down. And so understanding that there's not to have some fear-mongering tactic when there's an incredible amount of unknown, it's my feeling that we should use this opportunity as council to pass a directive that says until we know what this looks like economically, we need to batten the hatches and make sure that our employees are protected, the essential services our community provides are protected, and that things that were affordable and necessary 6 months ago, we certainly can reevaluate that. So that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Scott?
I would be very hesitant to publish that we're doing a hiring freeze. There's enough panic out there, and good grief, people can't come in anyway. Okay, I think everybody knows that. I do think that I'm a little conflicted about it. Like, it gives me hope whenever we're driving to the park to get our exercise. Thank God that's still legal. But whenever I see the road crews out there fixing the road, it gives me a sense of security and normalcy. And thank God the sky isn't falling and the world's not going to end. Now, at the restrooms, there is a sign up that's saying the restrooms are closed. And we don't need a big bulletin about that. I know why. Any citizen knows, oh, we're on a staggered crew. I like common sense government. I think the government is best that governs least and with a light hand. I don't think that we should do more than we have to do. And our previous mayor, Hal Baldwin, I loved the man. But one time I asked, what are you doing? Well, we passed 37 ordinances. He didn't answer the question, and I don't think that's a good answer. I don't think we should just pass ordinances because we want to. I'm not suggesting you're coming from this position, Councilman Larson. I don't mean it as a slight, but just to give us something to do or look like we're taking action or whatever. I think we need to back off. Nature's taking its course. Dr. Brown, you're doing a fantastic job. Everything even keeled, and I like the way the city's going. And I would be very, very hesitant to take any action other than what we're taking for the emergency thing. And let's send out the message to the community. Business as usual as soon as possible. Okay, and of course, some of the property values will go down. We all know people are going to be adversely affected, but let's mitigate some of that. One of my favorite bosses, he said, you can talk yourself into a recession, and you can. And let's not, add fuel to the already formidable fire.
Okay. Councilmember Davis?
When I start off like this, I kind of agree with Scott Larson to a point. Doesn't always happen that way, but to me, looking at the numbers, I mean, it seems like there is some play in there. My question and concern is some of these things, when you talk about the capital improvement projects, we've got these on the books to fix problems. Like the 9 positions. We're not even sure which positions we want to add because we haven't done the staffing study yet. So there's $400K there that who knows which way that'll go. And that, to me, is one we may be able to kick that can down the road a little bit. But with the capital improvement projects, I think I'd like to see a little bit more fidelity on that. For example, if there's some place where we might have to replace a sidewalk or add a sidewalk, now we haven't had a sidewalk for a while, we might be able to do with that through the rest of this year or into next year. But we also talk about drainage in there. And if we don't take care of the drainage problems, then luck would have it is we get a heck of a rainstorm coming up, and we've got other problems that go with this. So, because we've identified these projects to fix problems. I'd be interested in knowing some of the road projects. At some point, we've already invested some money in this, in some of these projects, to get them to a certain point. So, what happens if we just say, let's just shelve it for now? Are we taking a project that we can get done for a reasonable cost now and get us back on the other side of the power curve versus, we've done all this work and then we're just going to shelve it and then kick the can down the road and then have to reinvent the wheel? Because if we've gone out and done a study right now and we know the condition of the road and we're ready to fix it to that standard or to a current standard, if we don't fix it now and we wait a year or 2 or 3, the road is going to deteriorate more, which means we have to go back and reevaluate it, change the scope of work, increase the money. So, I mean, I agree that we have a lot of uncertainty here, and I think there's some things that we need to talk about individually and say, we can shelve this one, but some of those capital improvement projects, I think we need to pay some due diligence and say, if this is something that needs to get done based on the road impact studies or drainage issue, I think maybe we need to consider just pressing on with them to make sure that we're not creating a bigger problem down the road.
Okay, Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, both of those arguments there. I still see a lot of need for the infrastructure improvements out there, and if we wait and wait and wait until the timing is right and all the restrictions have been lifted, there's going to be a whole lot of people in that same mindset, and it's just going to clog things up to the point where almost nothing gets done because no one's available to do it. I do agree with the concept of protecting the employees of this city. I think it's really amazing how much I've gotten done this week because I hardly had any distractions. It was amazing. All those projects that I had on the back burner, I can actually get them done. So sometimes it's good to be kind of self-restricted to my humble abode. I'm wondering what kind of projects in the city could get accomplished without any additional distractions. Capital improvement projects, definitely. Let's not put them on the back burner, and let's carry on. That's all I have, sir.
Councilmember Dalla.
I guess I'm kind of on the same page with everybody here on this. I like the idea of continuing with the capital improvement projects. I think with the down blip that we've had here, whether it's going to end in the next couple of weeks or whether it goes on a couple of months, has disrupted a lot of what's going on out there. I think there's a potential to get some pretty good values on some stuff that we might want to look at putting out for bid as part of our regular capital improvement process. So I would say we just look at it on a case-by-case basis and just continue to be cautious and prudent.
Councilmember Larson.
Yeah, I think I'm open to a common sense approach that some people have mentioned here, but I do think there's some things that need to be clarified. One, I'm not suggesting a pause for a year or 2 years. I'm suggesting that we pause until we know what the impact's going to be, and right now we don't know what the impact's going to be. And the reality is, I'm open to also maybe finding bargains, and certainly there's certain critical things that we can't stop. I mean, we're not going to stop the pipeline projects. We're not going to stop a road that's halfway dug up. Obviously, we're going to continue. If we have an agreement with somebody, we're going to continue with that. But one thing that I think, I shouldn't say we're forgetting because I don't know what's going on through your mind, but I think that's easy to forget is that every dollar we spend is coming from the people who are the ones that Maggie talked about. Every dollar that we're spending today, they're going to have to pay for that. And many of them aren't going to have that money anymore. So you're going to have to get that money from somewhere. So if we don't take a step to say, hey, until we know what it is, we should stop a large majority of the expenditures. Because our plan, our cut line, that changes when your budget changes. And priorities of things might even change when your budget changes. And there are some things that will never change, right? We're always going to want to have our emergency services. We're always going to want to have, if there's a big old hole in the road that's damaging cars, we're going to need to fix that. We always need to deliver water to our community. But there are a lot of things like repaving parking lots or that are important, that they don't matter. And in a time like this. And so understanding that, my recommendation is that we don't continue business as usual because nobody is doing business as usual. Business as usual does not exist right now. And every dollar we say, oh, let's just go ahead and continue with that as if we had planned it in different times, is saying to our residents, your bill is the same. And I think most residents will be okay with that. I don't think they're going to say, oh, I don't want to pay that bill. I think there's going to be a lot more than people are expecting saying, I can't pay that bill, or they're not going to be there to pay that bill anymore. And so I'd hate to fall behind because we say, oh, we're just going to stop everything forever. And then we're in the same situation we're trying to avoid anyways, which is what happened in 2008 when we went forward and we bought a soccer field that our residents can't even use. But, and other things, and then we had 7 years build up, and we had to raise taxes because we were so far behind on a backlog. I don't want to recreate that. It's like taking out a player after they got 2 fouls. You're guaranteeing you don't have them instead of maybe you don't have them. I don't want to do that. But I also need, I think that we need to understand we don't know. There's some things that you need until you realize you can't afford them, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe that's not a need anymore. And so the level of uncertainty that exists, and I feel like in that movie as good as it gets when they sit down with Jack Nicholson and he says, Simon, you're broke. Schertz, you might be broke. We don't know it. We don't know. And that's not to cause panic. It's to say, hey, let's hope for the best. Let's prepare for the worst. Let's wait until we know what we're looking at and not sign any more contracts. Or if there's a service that's not essential, that we can say, you know what, we're not going to invest money in that right now. Not for a year, not till next budget cycle, but until we know what we're looking at. I strongly recommend that. And the hiring freeze, I would think, needs to be part of that, because the challenge with something like labor costs is that it is ongoing, because our expectation is that we're going to make a commitment to our employees to the best of our ability, and if you hire someone, you certainly don't want to cut that role at the next budget cycle in August because, oh, whoops, there's a pandemic, we didn't know. Well, yeah, we did know. And so that continues and grows, and so thinking about business as usual, it just doesn't exist. There's nobody in the world except for governments that are thinking of business as usual.
Councilman Hayward.
As I'm looking at this, there is some wiggle room in the budget. Am I correct? And so when you're presenting this, did you present this with keeping in mind what we're going through now and what could possibly happen? So if we have capital projects that need to go forward, they will go forward. And looking at, is this going to affect our bottom line? Because my issue is the same. If we've got capital projects with drainage and roads that need to be done, and then we put them off because we go, oh my gosh, we don't know what's going to happen. A lot of times we don't know what's going to happen. It's sort of like that leak in your roof. If you put it off, it only becomes bigger and costs more because, oh my gosh, I got to figure out, I got to hold on. But you got to fix that roof now because it gets worse and gets more costly. So with these numbers, is that in mind of what could possibly happen? Because we also have in here, in case of a disaster or a downturn, that we have money in the fund so that we can take from that and take care of the staff and everything else in the city. Correct? Or not correct?
Or not quite. Let me try this. I think it's generally, and so let me maybe back up and say, I will say that prior to this request for this item, certainly staff had been having these conversations. When we started seeing the effects in the United States, we began these discussions. We began looking at things. We began trying to get our hands on information to understand the implications of it. And so we've been very attuned to that. And so I don't know that I disagree with anything that anybody on council has said. Just as a reminder, yeah, we have, as indicated, we have $1.5 million excess in our reserves that we weren't planning to spend this year that we have full flexibility with. It's not planned to be spent on anything. It's essentially extra and can tap into it without not doing something else. I will say that part of the discussions that we had with council about our reserve policy were very specific and went through a few meetings, and it was, kind of the recommendation had been that 25% normally. We typically viewed that as some sort of incident like the flood from '98, where the city has significantly higher costs to provide services to folks that we need to be able to tap into until we can perhaps get reimbursed by the federal or state government to keep operations going. We had that 1% to sort of make thoughtful decisions as we ease into, and again, probably not the right term, an economic downturn. But clear to, I think, staff's understanding is if there's an economic downturn, we would make cuts as appropriate, depending on how significant that was, to weather that. What we didn't want to do is overspend and then spend however many years trying to build up for overspending, or have spent more and have to make more radical cuts a few ways in. And so I think the councilman's certainly right. We're watching it, we're monitoring, we're being thoughtful, having internal conversations. Do we need to do this? Should we pause it? And then likely that will significantly impact the budget that comes forward either in May, and then probably again we'll adjust at the end of July when we get the certified property values going forward. But again, to be clear, what we made clear with the reserve fund discussion is there's an economic downturn in revenue. We're going to make cuts as appropriate. So I think I can speak for the city manager. You would not see a budget proposal for this next year where we just assume, oh, it'll be fine, it'll work out. We're going to take stock of the current situation at that time and present a budget that's appropriate. And I think what we've typically done, and Councilman Scagliola and I have bantered about this before, is we're very conservative. We try not to be so conservative that we hurt our residents or that they go without this, that, and the other. But again, I think we're appropriately cautious going forward. The last thing I would say with the projects, and again, I think I've gotten the gist of it, let's not put something off that's going to have a higher cost later to do, or that we're going to kind of regret in that mindset. I will say, again, commenting on Councilman Scagliola's point, I found my weekend fairly productive as I was cooped up with the family at the house. I will say this from a staff perspective, as some of you have seen, it is extremely busy just dealing with this dynamic, ever-changing situation. Is a lot of work, and that's a lot of work at a lot of levels. I don't hesitate to even ask how many hours you've probably put in over the course of the last week, but it's probably more than you can count. And yeah, it's probably, and that's at all levels. So again, a lot of what we do during the day is trying to figure out how we message to the public, what procedures we need to put in place to keep the city going and things like that. And so I will only say this, that I would not expect this to be us moving at our fastest with moving these projects forward. As you recall, engineering and John Nowak and Public Works, we have the projects that are kicking off that they have to monitor, the Schertz Parkway construction, the things that we've already bid out for work. We have engineering firms that we have contracted with for design work. And so again, I will say, I don't think we're going to have to pause anything right now, because we're as busy as we are with the things ahead of us. And so that'll kind of, if you will, naturally buy us a bit of time to look up in a month, 2 months, take stock of things. And again, I think what I understand is everybody would say, hey, look, if this thing doesn't go as we hope and it goes the opposite, we need to revisit this conversation. Don't take this as carte blanche to spend no matter what happens. Be thoughtful about it, but at the same time, let's not look up a year from now and go, if only we had done this, we could have saved our taxpayers money and done this, that, and the other going forward. So that's the message that I've gotten from the discussion.
Very good points. And so, when it comes to the staffing study and the 9 positions, I mean, we're already, going to wait on that until we get the results to you. That's another month away. Then we can decide that. And the same with class and comp. We're a month away, basically, from getting that to you, and we will have some time. A month from now, we'll probably know more than we know today. The real critical thing is our merit increase. And so I'd like some guidance, whether we go forward with our merit increase, because that usually goes into effect the 1st of April. So that's right on top of us. We've almost completed our evaluation process. That's $181,000, that we have put aside for our employees. So, when we talk about taking care of our employees, they haven't had a raise in a year. Seemingly, that money, we have other resources that we could tap into if we did get into a crunch. And we talked about some of that. So I'd just like a little of your feedback on that.
Councilmember Larson.
Well, I'll say, since I've been the most doom and gloom on the spending, I say we move forward with the merit increases and the commitments we've made there. The last thing we need in our community is another pay cut or lack of growth in pay. I think that's kind of the biggest issue that we need, is cash in people's pockets. So if you're blessed to work for the city of Schertz, I think we should honor that commitment. I would rather not pave a road or a sidewalk before backing on the commitment to the people.
Councilmember Dalla.
Yeah, I would just concur with that. There's a whole lot of other things we can cut before we start looking at taking money away from our employees that really work hard.
Councilmember Hayward.
I concur. Merit pay, we need to let them know. Taking care of the staff, that's the main thing.
Councilmember Davis.
I concur. Press on with the merit. That shouldn't be a problem.
Councilmember Brown. No comments?
Absolutely.
Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of merit pay itself. However, it is a funded program, so continue.
Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, I do want to, I like the idea of the merit pay, that's fine. I do want to say something about business as usual. That's what we all hope for. Of course, these are extraordinary times. I ran into the public works gal down at Arling's, and we were talking about bosses. Dr. Brown, you would have liked the conversation. And I said I had a boss. It was like, no problem, no matter what happened, everything's business as usual. It's great. And the towers are going down, and we had a department head meeting. And I thought, oh, my God, there has to be some humanity in life. There's a time when you got to stop. And then I also had another boss who walked around saying, oh, we're all going to die, we're all going to die. And that was not a good place to work, because you don't want that. And she's like, well, he's right in the middle of that. He responds very appropriately, even, calm, just wonderful, calm. But you take care of business when we have emergencies. You're there on the front line, and you get the job done. And I like that balance, and I like it a lot. And I said that for Councilman Larson, because I didn't mean to disparage you. It is not business as usual. I stand corrected. But thank you so much, and I'm on board with that.
Okay, Dr. Brown, there seems to be a unanimous consensus regarding compensation. I'd like to thank the council for their comments regarding this issue. It puts a perspective on the direction our city is going. There is no action required on this item, so we'll move on to item number 9. Resolution number 20R31, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the approval of the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2018-2019 and other matters in connection therewith. Mr. Walters, the floor is yours.
Screen's a little blurry. I'm going to try to do something we have not done before. I'm going to try to get the auditor on the phone and see if I can get her to project over the microphone system. Their partners met late last week and suspended all travel for them as well, just like everybody else. So the auditors, which normally would give this presentation and go over the highlights, she can't be here. I'm going to see if she can still join us by phone, and we can walk through the results of our annual report and hit some highlights. If she can't do it, then I will step in and go through the report and hit some highlights for you.
This is Paula.
Hey, Paula, this is the City of Schertz.
Yes.
Can everyone hear her? What was her?
Can everyone hear me?
Speaker should be by the ear. Try this. Okay. Try right in the middle, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay, well, that sounds good. My name is Paula Lau with Patillo Brown & Hill, and I appreciate you guys allowing me the opportunity to call in this evening to discuss with you the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2019. So, can everyone still hear me pretty well?
Yes, going on good.
Well, good, good. All right, I definitely apologize for not being there this evening. In light of the events, I really do appreciate you guys let me call in. As each of you might remember as well, this is the first year that we have worked with the City of Schertz, and I definitely appreciate everyone on the council providing us this great opportunity to be able to work with a great group of people. Last week, I did actually make it to the City of Schertz and met with the audit committee, and was able to talk about the results of the audit and talk about the comprehensive annual financial report as well with them, and we're able to answer any question that they had as well. So, but this evening, what I would like to do is just talk to you about the results of the audit and just point out a couple of items that are indicators of the financial position of the city at the end of the fiscal year as well. I think most of you do have a copy of the comprehensive annual financial report in front of you, and in that report, on page 1, you will find our independent auditor's report. Basically, what this report says, it provides you with information of what management's responsibility of the financial statements are, which includes responsibility for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements. And also it talks about, in the next paragraph down, for the auditor's responsibility. And us as auditors, Tiller Brown Hill, we are required to follow a couple of auditing standards. There's generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards to obtain a reasonable assurance that these financial statements are materially correct. And we were able to render an unmodified opinion, and an unmodified opinion is the highest opinion that can be rendered as well. And so it's known as a clean opinion to most individuals, and so that's great results for the audit for fiscal year 2019. And towards the very back of the report, we issued another report in accordance with the government auditing standards, as I mentioned, and then that you'll find on page 138, very back of the report. Those standards require us to consider internal controls and processes of the entity, as well as if we were to come across a material noncompliance, we are required to report that material noncompliance to you here, or if, as we're looking and considering those internal controls and processes of the city and don't appear to be able to detect some significant items that could go wrong in the financial statements, we are required to report those to you here as well. And I'm happy to inform you that we do not have any of those items to bring to your attention in this letter. So it's great news. Everyone was very helpful throughout the audit process and very cooperative as well. We appreciated everyone's work in working with us too. But just as far as like a couple of highlights in regards to like the financial health of the entity, you can look on page 17 and 18 of the comprehensive annual financial report. The total fund balance for the general fund at the end of the fiscal year was approximately $17.5 million for the general fund. But if you add up the assigned and unassigned fund balance for the general fund, it was approximately $14.8 million. And that results in about 52% of the total general fund 2019 expenditures. And I think that that's where the city does anticipate that being as well. So that's great news there as well. As far as the water and sewer fund, looking at net position for the other large fund, and for the city on page 25, you can see net position for the water and sewer system. At the bottom, towards the bottom of that page, you can see in all three categories of net position, net investment and capital assets, restricted for construction and unrestricted, all three of those categories are positive. And unrestricted net position for that fund is approximately $32 million as well. And again, a good financial position there for the city. But those are just a couple of highlights, results of the audit, and just pointing out a couple of things, indicators for financial health of the city. As I mentioned before, I did come out last week and met with the audit committee, answered any type of questions that they had as well, and I think the meeting went very well. And I appreciate everyone's work and cooperation throughout the audit process. But if any of you have questions, I am more than happy to answer those as well. And thank you for understanding of why we're doing this via a phone conference as well.
Are there any questions for the auditors or staff on the annual report? And this is a very quick review, given the circumstances, but we can still answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Council, any floors open for discussion? None? Okay, is there a motion to accept the audit? Yes, I'm sorry, Councilman Dalla?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for all the work you did on putting this together. There's obviously a lot to keep track of there. It's definitely not reading material you want to try to cover at the end of a long day at work. But
You're at home and you have plenty of time.
Really, the one questions I had was dealing with the net pension liabilities, page 67. You want to get down to that? And just looking at that, how our percentages decreased from 77 down to 72%, and the net liability being approaching $20 million. And I know virtually all entities out there are not 100% funded on their pension liability, but at what point is that something to become concerned about where we need to put additional money into?
Paulo, the question was on the change in the net pension liability. I'm going to go ahead and point out for this year, one of the reasons it dropped was nothing in the city. So all had to do with the TMRS and specifically the net investment income. Normally that'd be positive, but they have a negative adjustment on their books this year that really dropped that down. If you look at, in the past, we've gone from, if you go even further back, these have been growing pretty steadily. TMRS offers a full rate. Basically, they come in and see how far away you are from being 100% funded. They offer you a recommended rate to get there over a reasonable amount of time, and the city of Schertz has been paying that rate every year going forward. We hit our lowest point. I can't remember exact date, but we were down in the 40% range. What we had done was whenever we had increased benefits for employees of the city to retire, we made those adjustments retroactively, which means we changed the deposit ratio, how much employees put in. We made it as if they had always put in that amount for their entirety of their TMRS lifetime. So the cities then took that on as paying that entire amount back. Theoretically, if an employee starts at the city under a full set of benefits at TMRS, that individual employee, if they broke it up into individual accounts, would never have, or would always be fully funded. So if I started here and we have the maximum benefits, the amount I put in, the amount the city puts in, TMRS is calculating the amount that I'm going to get out, and me personally, if they broke it down that way, would be 100% funded. So basically, the city built up this large liability when we first entered TMRS, and then whenever we increased our benefits. We started at the lowest level of benefits when we entered TMRS, and especially in the early 2000s, we really ramped up. We went from 5% required deposit and a 1-to-1 match to a 7% deposit and a 2-to-1 match. And every time we made one of those changes, the funding ratio dropped substantially. We are now at the maximum benefits offered by TMRS. And since that time, we've gone, in the past 15 years, we've gone from the 40% range. We hit the high point at 77.8. That was last year. That was the highest point we've been, but we've made steady progress throughout that. This is only, I believe, the second time it's gone the other direction. And TMRS has been, not behind it, but they've had a couple of changes, requirements of how they do the actuarial studies to price out how much we should have in the bank with them. And when they made that change to be a little more conservative, all cities in TMRS dropped that year. And then this year is another year almost all of the cities in TMRS should have dropped with they made that net investment adjustment. It's probably is averaging out that almost $6 million net investment from last year is why it came out to a negative. We can get some more information on that if you're interested in. The city's committed to paying that full rate and getting there in a reasonable amount of time.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and that's correct too. And also too, that net investment income, if you remember the stock market towards the end of 2018, that calendar year, it had dropped considerably since investments didn't perform quite as what was expected by the plan. That's why you see that negative there this particular year in 2018. So, and I would anticipate the same thing. I know we're only in March, but it sounds like potentially the stock market towards the end of 2020 could be the same way. But next year, the measurement date for the TMRS plan will be as of December 31st, 2019.
Okay, Councilman Larson.
Just to follow up on some of this, one reminder to everybody, don't look at your 401k. I think I'd probably hate to see this number now. I think I saw the first two major investments made up almost 2/3 of the TMRS, and they're both 95% or greater invested in U.S. stocks and or international stocks. We know that over time that'll bounce back, but I think I remember, and I could be completely wrong on this because so many things pass my brain here, but didn't we make like a one-time adjustment payment to TMRS when they changed the algorithm, or is that an ongoing annual payment? Am I remembering that correctly?
We had discussed making a one-time payment. At the time we talked to TMRS, they said they didn't really recommend it. It would smooth out, and as long as we kept paying the full rate that they prescribe every year, we would move along that funding level until we get to that 100%. I think they had a community, at that time they gave us an example of a community that they're only like $1 million away, so the community wrote a check for $1 million. Well, then they had a good investment return and turned around and basically sent the money back to the city the next year. That was a story we got when we had considered that after we had some fund balance, and then we, in the original discussion when the cities and counties and other governments were forced to put this information in here like that.
Okay. And then, and just to clarify my understanding, you said a current, like if we hired a new employee now, or even a currently working employee, their contribution plus the contribution we make is 100% funded, theoretically based on the formulas TMRS is using. And so is there situations where, like, let's say the stock market takes a prolonged period of time, I hope not, but maybe it takes a couple years to rebound to its current levels. Do they request payments, or do they say ride that out and see what happens? Do we make any additional payments to them to make up for that, or is their philosophy generally wait and see?
Their philosophy is kind of rolling it into the rate they prescribe to us and smoothing it out.
Okay.
In the past few years, we've had our rate that we actually pay on our payroll to TMRS has actually dropped in the past couple of years, even though we had this growth. We were up at the highest point. We were paying, I think, 16.32% of our gross payroll was going to TMRS. They dropped their rate to 16.16, and then 16 for this last year. So
okay.
Fully dropped that down except for this 1 year. Everything's been performing better than normal, so we didn't have to contribute as much, and so they're adjusting that amount we pay every year.
And are there risks of huge swings from 1 year to the next in that rate, or is it generally incremental?
Generally, it's incremental. They do, probably what's buried in here is they have deferred outflows and inflows, so they try to reduce the large fluctuations and kind of smooth that out on top of this. And there's actually a section of that in here I can go over. But they'll try to smooth it out as much as possible. If it went from a long time, one of the adjustments that they made that got everyone kind of riled up was they lowered the discount rate. It was 7%, and they lowered that to 6.5%. And that made everyone's liability jump higher. So we're not expecting as much return. And so if the economy stays at a low point for a long period of time, like we did in the last recession, they could lower that as well. That would increase everyone's liability and then increase the amount prescribed to each city in their annual rate. Okay. That rate's an annual adjustment.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Council, any other comments?
Yeah, and those changes are, they're trying to be smoothed out, but they're not as smoothed out as what they used to be before the new accounting standards. I think the investment rate of returns are amortized over a 5-year period. But some of the other ones have a different number of an amortization period. And that's one of the things with the new standard that they talked about, is that you will see a lot more volatility and your expenses as a result of, implementing GASB 75 and 68, which is basically the OPEB and the pension standards. It's one of the things that they were warning us about as well.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to accept the audit report as presented and approve Resolution 20R31?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Councilmember Davis, second by Councilmember Hayward. Any other comments, questions? No. Let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 You got 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. James.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay, next we'll have a roll call confirmation. Our City Secretary, Brenda Dennis, will provide roll call confirmation for item number 9.
Yes, item number 9, resolution number 20R31. A motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dawes, Scaglione, Hayward, and Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. I'd like to mention the following items were also provided to council and are available for public view. Item number 10, a monthly update on major projects in progress and capital improvement projects. And item number 11, the 2020 census update and promotion. We'll continue with announcements. Dr. Brown, any further announcements?
Mayor, I'd be remiss if I didn't make some recognitions. So is Kate back there? I just want to recognize our public safety team for the fantastic job they've done during this contingency crisis, whatever you want to call it. They've just done fantastic. So Kate and Jason and Chief Hansen, Chief Bain, done a fantastic job of preparing the staff, making a whole range of decisions that are not normal, so to speak, and just really appreciate it. They're ably led by Assistant City Manager Kilm. So Charles, thank you for your great work. Also on my team, Brian James and Sarah Gonzalez also have done a tremendous job just sort of leading the staff through this, because, some of the rest of us have been dealing with the crisis as it unfolds, so I really appreciate them. And then our fine facilities staff, all the tremendous work that they've been doing, the extra work, and really all of our staff has pulled together as a tremendous team, and I just really appreciate a very can-do effort just trying to make all this happen. So just want to thank them all for that. Also, I'm told that on the Baldwin Scholarship, if students are applying, they don't actually have to come to the meeting. They can watch it online, and they can still get credit for that. So I wanted to get that into the record. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Dr. Brown, thank you for all your efforts during this time. Really do appreciate it. Gave everybody kudos but yourself. All right. Council, any items you'd like to place on the future agenda item? Yes, Councilmember Dalla.
I don't know if this would be an agenda item or just a discussion, but we've made the leap to doing live streaming. I guess as part of that, given what might be going on in the future, can we look at a way, too, for citizens to be able to participate from remote locations as well?
So thank you for bringing that up. And that was the other, I knew I was forgetting something. So this may be the last time we meet in person as a group for a while. Just depends on how this thing continues to evolve. So we are looking at telephonic options and virtual options for council meetings, and part of that is how are we going to let the residents participate. So we'll be getting more information to you. Our IT team has taken that on as a task, and I would anticipate the next meeting would probably be telephonic or virtual of some sort, but we'll get that word out as we get closer to the meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Just want to confirm that we will have the, excuse me, the emergency declaration on the agenda each week going forward. Thank you.
Yes, and for the records, that's ordinance number 20H09. Item number 5, yes. Okay. Any other agenda items, council? No?
Mayor?
Yes.
I have one not for the future agenda, but I just wanted to bring to your attention, maybe we could publicize to our local businesses. Walmart is doing an open call for U.S.-made products. So if we have people making products in the United States, that will be on April 1st, and I can forward this email to you and Dr. Brown also.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Announcements and recognitions by council members. Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Nothing that I've attended recently with the world that we're in right now. Dr. Brown, do we have any updates or anticipate any updates on what city services we will be scaling back on? For example, specifically I know we put a week hiatus on the senior center for a deep clean and other things, and the library. With the emergency declaration, will they still be in effect, or do we anticipate some kind of library service to some degree?
I guess I can talk to it. That's all covered in the emergency declaration. So we have just effectively extended that until April 14th, the closure of the library and the closure of the senior center.
Okay.
And so thank you for bringing that up. But everything that went along with that emergency declaration has been extended.
Well, no, I understand it, but the emergency declaration says, certain governmental activities will still go on, things like that. I was wondering, I want to make sure that folks understand that, like, the senior center is going to be closed completely. The library, in this case, will be closed completely. There will not be there will not be an ability like HEB is doing for 10 people at a time to go in, or 2 people to go in at a time to check something out and then leave. We're just going to close it down.
That's correct.
Thank you.
But other than that, everything else is up and operating. Civic Center, excuse me, that's right. Civic Center will be closed as well, so we'll not have any activities in there.
Park pavilions.
Park pavilions are closed. Parks are still open. Park playscapes are closed.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
Councilmember Scott.
Oh, no, not at this time.
Councilmember Larson. Nothing, Mayor. Councilmember Dalla.
Nothing, sir.
Councilmember Scagliola.
I got a email, Dr. Brown, on the 13th of March in reference to the Bainig Road drainage issue. I was wondering if you had received that email. If not, I'd like to share it with you. And the other thing, scholarship opportunities. We know about the Baldwin Scholarship. I'd like to make mention of the Schertz Lions Club as a scholarship program also. Check out the website. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward.
Nothing, sir. In light of what's going on, there's no events I've been able to attend.
Councilmember Brown.
Nothing tonight.
Okay. I don't have any further comments. It is 8:24. We stand adjourned.